Hey, this is going to be really short and sweet, but I wanted to make sure that I jump on and talk a little bit about how to exercise in order to optimize sleep. Because I know among all the other things, and I'm going to share some of my other tools, things that I pack in suitcases when I'm traveling, whether here in the States, I'm traveling somewhere, or I happen to be going out of the country this week, and it's important, especially if you travel across time zones, that you're optimizing everything you possibly can. And then there is if you're the host and you just have guests coming in, the holidays change everything. And for me, when I was living alone, and yet I would have somebody come over and they were staying for the weekend or whatever, you have other noises inside of your house, right? And you're not used to hearing anybody wiggle around in that bedroom or downstairs in take a shower, at a time you're not expecting it. And all of that disrupts us. So we're going to dig into it. Hey, Linda, Jennifer, Flora, Cindy, and talk about what happens. Hey, Stephen, when you either travel or if you're just at home and regularly you're not sleeping, I want to dive into that. So this will be short and sweet unless you all have a lot of questions. But let's rock and roll. So I'm fresh out of the pool, so these are goggle eyes. I haven't been crying. So if you're nice to me, I won't cry while I'm here either. So let's go. So let's talk first about how do you optimize your sleep. Hey, Jerry Bailey, through the exercise that you do, or what can you do to manipulate it? So first of all, just kind of a concept in You Still Got It, Girl, the book right behind me, and I can't do this backwards, but You Still Got It, Girl, the After 50 fitness formula for women. I talk a lot about that. It's not just, sleep makes your exercise better or exercise makes your sleep better, but it goes both ways. So if sleep is something you're struggling with right now, I would suggest that make every exercise decision, as well as your food and your hygiene at bedtime and when you wake up, make all of those decisions around making your sleep better. So you got to know where you need to start, what's your priority, and don't go for that fat burning long exercise, super hard exercise until you get that sleep dialed in, because so many good hormones happen. And I won't dive into that. Tonight's not all about a hormone lesson necessarily, but that is the pivotal point why sleep is so important. I think the majority of us would say it's important because it's a deal breaker, right? I mean, if you didn't sleep last night, you're probably, you were suffering this afternoon, depending on what time of day it is for you right now, suffered this afternoon with more cravings. You're, fortunately it's Sunday afternoon and maybe not, depending on if you work on the weekends or not, but you were probably a little bit more groggy, not too lively. All those things that you wanted to do, you didn't do. And, feels like you kind of lost a day, and nobody wants that. So, if you have brain fog, can't concentrate, you're just not up to yourself, that's one thing. But it also, breaks the deal as far as testosterone and growth hormone and your cortisol and all of that, helping to optimize, if they're balanced, your muscle. So if you're doing great workouts, you're doing the work and you're being pretty diligent with 80-20, at least with eating the things that are right for your body right now, and you're not sleeping, you're just, you're hitting your head against the wall. Most likely you are probably frustrated and exhausted. Not a good combination. So let's just get rid of that. So here's the answers. Number one, remember the formula that we use for flipping 50, and that women's formula for getting fit after 50 is intense early and light late. And then I'm going to define that because it's a great opportunity. This came up in one of our private groups in the cafe membership. And by the way, if you're interested in the cafe, our membership, and not in it yet, we only open a couple times a year. And it, of course, like everybody else's Black Friday, something, we are opening up the doors soon. So get in on that. And I'll put the link here later so that you can learn a little bit more about it. But in the cafe, someone asked, my cortisol is actually high late in the afternoon, and my naturopath suggested I do exercise late afternoon to purge some of that cortisol. What do you think of that? And so I'll respond to that. I'll come back to it. But here's what we want to do. Intense early. What I mean by that is really we're talking about the things that rev you up. And high intensity interval training is something that you should be doing when you're 50 or over, or in perimenopause and older, because we need that short little spurts of activity to optimize cortisol. That's really how it was meant to be used in the first place. Whatever got us into this, okay, acute, we got to be on all the time. We have to have this attached to our brain and to our arm and our pockets. I mean, that's really not how we were meant to be. We were meant to, let's sprint and then let's rest, and let's sprint and let's rest. And at one point that was because you were running for supper or running from being supper. And that worked out really well, right? If you were doing it. But then there was, okay, now you got to go to school and you got to study really hard because there's going to be a test. But then the test was over and you were done and you could relax. Or it was final exam week, or you went hard all semester and then you got a break. But we really don't have that too much. Even those college students and kids in school have less and less of that because they're in so many sports and they're doing so many extracurricular activities that they don't really just have time to get bored, and I know I used to say this to my kids, the one and whoever was around the house then, I'm bored, that, it's so good for them to get bored. My answer used to be, well, maybe you're boring, figure it out to do something, and this was, getting them off of electronics. But having that downtime, we don't have it anymore. So we really got to use other tools, and exercise is one way to do that, to kind of reteach your body that, oh yeah, this is how stress is supposed to be. I'm supposed to use a little stress while I'm exercising and then relax. And sometimes we manipulate that in the wrong way too, right? We turn it into, okay, if a little is good, more must be better. So I'm going to do that high intensity interval training, and I'm going to do it instead of 30 minutes, I'm going to do it for an hour. And there we go, messing with nature again. And that's not good. More is not better. So it's like when you took speech class, and I pick on that because more people would rather, be the guest at a funeral than give the eulogy. And, that's a cliche, but we've all heard it and we get it. Most people do not like public speaking. So I use that example, but you prepare for a speech, you're super nervous about this speech, and then you give it and it's over. Whew, right? So the stress goes down, your shoulders come back out of your ears, and you're good to go. That's the way stress is meant to be used. So little bits at a time. So if you're going to do, studies say in the last 6 to 9 months, in that time frame, a study came out, now that we've had high intensity exercise out here using it for so long and so many people have used it, we now know that about 45 minutes total per week of high intensity interval training is optimal. And when you do more than that, the injury rate starts to go up and up and up. In fact, the correlation between when high intensity interval training got popular and the injury rate rising by 544%, that was not a typo, right? I memorized my speech really well, right? So that's a lot. So when you start doing more, thinking more is better, we start spilling cortisol in the other way, and we just get sloppy and tired. And when we do that, we lose form and we create injuries or the opportunity for them. So a little is more, and that means, a little is more, less is more. So, 45 minutes, probably better if you don't do it just once a week, but you do it twice. And each time you do a warm up and a cool down in between, maybe it's 20 to 25 minutes of interval training. Or if you're, preferring you do three times a week, you do 15 minutes at a time with bookended warm up and cool down, because that's important. That's the best way to use cortisol for exercise. So what time of day would you do it? You would do it in the morning. And the reason is your cortisol levels are up in the morning. If you're feeling good anyway, you're functioning really well. And those of you who are not, if you're getting up in the morning and you're feeling, I'm never rested in the morning, or I feel like I'm hungover, but I didn't have the party, that's potentially some adrenal fatigue going on, or HPA access, if you want to use the proper identified term. But either way, you're tired. Okay, that's the bottom line. Then that you would be the anomaly. But for most of us, if you could naturally wake up, that just waking up, because even if you were in a dark room, is due to cortisol. It's coming up, and it gets you ready to be more productive. So in the morning, most of us would generally say, I'm more productive, I focus better. If I'm going to work on a project or I have to create something, I do it in the morning so that I can get it done. And you may not have necessarily realized that, depending on your job, you haven't fallen into that need. But if you can think back to when I was in school, how did it go for you? The morning classes versus the afternoon classes. So what happens is your cortisol rises. It's at its highest at about 8 a.m. if all is going well. And then at about 11 or 12, it begins to hit peaks, and then it starts to come down. So for women who recognize that I get hangry, in the afternoon, or if there are cookies or somebody's bringing that darn caramel Christmas stuff in to the break room between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, you're kind of vulnerable. So stay out of there, okay? And put that stuff in the freezer so you can't actually eat it. But that makes you a little bit vulnerable when that cortisol comes down, especially if you are tired. And the later in the day it goes, that cortisol should go down, and it's at its lowest at 2 a.m. So it actually keeps going down to prepare you to get ready for sleep. So if you do a high intensity workout later in the day, you're going to rev that cortisol up and get it all stirred up, and it will kind of get in the way of you sleeping optimally. So what I want you to do is think intense early and light late. Even if, so this is for those of you that always want to play catch up, like you missed a workout, and shouldn't I do the workout later in the day if I didn't get to it? No, I'm going to write you a pass and say, no, you don't need to do that. In fact, you don't want to do that. So if I missed a workout in the morning, it was supposed to be an intense workout, something happened, maybe the electricity was off, or I got called in to do a webinar, or something went wrong on a website. So in my world, it's technology. In your world, it may be something else. But when you can't get that workout in later in the day, still no catch up. You might do weight training, because that's not quite as revving. If you're in the habit of really working hard, you're really going after it during your weight training, ideally in the morning. But I don't mind for women to put that in the afternoon, but before dinner, not after dinner. So save all that. After dinner is very light. A walk with your significant other after dinner is a better way to go. So it's always that high. And then later in the day is, walking or yoga, and weight training would be one option. But again, keep it shorter the more intense it is, and do it before dinner. And you're not going speedy. So it's more about, let's tax those muscles and then get on with it. So don't make it long and drawn out either. So the question that I want to come back to was, now that you know the normal curve for cortisol, what should be happening? The question from our community was, okay, I tested my cortisol levels are high in the afternoon. And generally we know that either from it's predicted from a blood test, or you might be doing a saliva test and checking at 4 different points during the day. And it was high. And so she had the suggestion that, exercise late in the day to purge it. But you wouldn't want to do the kind that revs it up and gets it stirred up. The kind that kind of purges that and gets it back down is still doing something like walking. So take a walk. And I'm not suggesting that you have a heart rate monitor on, or that you're walking at a certain pace and making sure that you're out of breath. That again becomes more intense. You're just going for a walk. Go outside, go without this, okay, unless somebody depends on you and it's life or death. But don't look at it. You might listen to it, or just listen to nature. Get in green if you can. near the grass, near the trees as much as you can. If you live in an urban area and that's not possible, try to get to a park. There is a difference. There's been studies that looked at what is the difference in, walking on stress, specifically walking in urban sidewalk buildings, city streets versus same city, but going to a park versus literally being out in the woods and going to a forest. And it gets better, the more green you are. So take that into consideration. So going for a walk, and I know for some of you, we're going into these months where it may be 20 below where you are and icy outside and the option is not good. So if you're on that treadmill, try to put that thing in an environment where it's not a low ceiling and it's dark and you don't like it down there. Try to make that room as bright as possible. Paint the walls and the ceiling white. Get some music in there. And if you're inclined to watch television, make it something that you love watching. If you watch National Geographic or you watch the Discovery Channel and you're watching animals and outdoors, you're going to actually help yourself decrease your stress level much better than probably if you watch, I don't know, King of Thrones. I don't even know what that is. I don't watch television. So the point is, get yourself exposed to things that decrease your stress level, or just listen to music or a podcast if you enjoy that, but it should be pleasurable. So you want to pair the activity that you're doing with something good if you do have to be inside and or dance around in your living room or anywhere you need to in your underwear you want to, but to music that you love. Do something that's enjoyable if you're doing it. And it's not about elevating heart rate. Remember that. So that late day activity to purge the cortisol and the adrenaline is still light. It's just doing it so that you're feeling better. So walking is great, and short or long and moderate, everything in between for lower intensity exercise is very helpful for decreasing cortisol as long as it's done correctly, right? So don't be on the phone taking a work call while you're doing that. It's not going to have the same effect. Give yourself the frame of mind and the space. And, it may be better for you to walk outside if you have kids still at home because, unfortunately, they're probably not going to follow you. They'll just say, I'll be back in 30, 45 minutes. And, they know where to find you. And you can carry your phone for emergency's sake, but keep that in mind. And, I did mention yoga, right? So late in the day, but if yoga is not your jam, and or it makes you nervous or panicky or yoga pants do, that's just it kind of stands in and fills the space. So if it's stretching or it's foam rolling or it's Pilates or it's just your own little version of getting on the floor and rolling around a little bit, doing some stretches that you remember and that feel good for you, that also counts. So those kinds of lower activities that release muscle tension, that's really what you're after. So that's the schedule. So let me talk the flip side. Since I said exercise points at stress, right? And stress also points at exercise. So what happens if you don't sleep well and your workout in the morning is supposed to be a high intensity workout? What do? How do you adjust? So here's my suggestion for that. So keep your morning routine. First of all, don't sleep in. There's no such thing as sleeping in. And a friend of mine actually who wrote a little expert tip in the sleep chapter, Dr. Michael Bruce, who is the sleep doctor, literally, says really the snooze button is one of the worst possible inventions when it comes to benefits for sleep in the world. Right? So don't do it. Make sure that your alarm clock is across the room if you're using an alarm clock, and get up at the same time. I know that a lot of women are like, what? I thought sleep was so important. So shouldn't I get the sleep? And the answer is yes, you should. But you're helping yourself more get a good night's sleep the next night and the next and the next and the next if you keep yourself in a consistent habit of getting up and going to bed at the same time. What happens between sometimes we don't have control over, but you'll be helping yourself more if you keep that wake time, and that's the one you have most control over. So I know things happen at night, things happen that you've got to maybe stay up to be up for kids or go pick up kids or whatever it may be. But we all control our mornings so much more, right? So if you want to do something uninterrupted, get up and do it in the morning. Generally, that's the best word of thumb. So think about same wake up call in the morning all the time and how you're going to adjust your exercises like this. You want to be thinking this when you're sleep deprived, if you didn't sleep well, even 2 hours, which think about that, that's not hard to do. You know, if you go to bed, you kind of push your bedtime and you go into bed an hour later than you wanted to, you toss and turn and woke up a little bit in the middle of the night, and or you got up earlier than you really want to, your alarm goes off and wakes you up, you know, because you've got to be somewhere looking and smelling good by a certain amount of certain time. It's easy to lose 2 hours sleep per night, right? We're already compromised in terms of our ability to function and just reaction skills. So, what do I mean by that? Best example is like taking your foot from accelerator to brake. Your reaction skills are not as good. You're not as good a driver. And if you lose 4 hours of sleep, so let's say, you know, it's, you know, a Christmas party, it's a buffet, and, or you had a cocktail and then you woke up in the middle of the night, you went to sleep really great, but then you wake up and you're like, oh, it's not good, right? Anybody? Anybody? And then you have to get up in the morning anyway. So 4 hours is not that hard, right? So it's not hard to lose that much even. We have essentially the reaction skills the same as if we had a blood alcohol level of someone who would be pulled over and taken to the slammer. So, you know, I'm not saying your blood alcohol level changes, but you are equivocally drunk. You're under the influence such that your reaction skills are so bad, we pull you off the road so that you don't hurt yourself or hurt somebody else. So imagine, you know, what kind of work you do. If you're in healthcare, that's a little alarming, especially for those of you who get up at 3 a.m. to do a shift, right? That's not good. Not good for you to be on the road and not good for you to be making those decisions at work. But that's a whole nother rabbit hole we won't go down. How do you manipulate your workout if your reaction skills are compromised? How many of you are working on balance? And that's something that you want to focus on in your exercise program. A lot of us, probably over 40 or over 50, have noticed my balance isn't as good. So I'm doing some things that challenge me in my workout. We want to leave some of that out. So you want to be a little bit more stable on those mornings after I didn't sleep very well. If you tell that to your trainer, that should be right now, okay, I'm going to change the workout we had planned for today, and we're going to do some other things. Or if you're going into a room full of boot camp people and you tell a trainer that, and hopefully you do, they will say, okay, when we do these things, what I want you to do is something else, because you've got to be safe. So if you're doing anything that is quick reaction and you could get hurt or someone else could because you're pairing up with them, you want to be aware of that. So it would be much easier for you to twist an ankle, for instance, if you were doing quick agility movements with your feet and or hopping on one leg or doing anything on a box jump. So all of those things you need to factor in. So be a little bit more safe. In a bigger perspective, let's say you're on a treadmill. You know, that may not be the ideal thing for you to do on a day after sleep. So you've got a moving belt. You know, in the lights in the gym often are kind of fluorescent. They're not potentially the healthiest lights. And so they may do funky things to you if you're already tired, right? So think about, you know, where am I going to be the most stable? So you might forego that treadmill and, you know, do an elliptical or do an exercise bike that day if you were doing a cardio machine. And just be careful if you're doing some agility movements, you know, because ordinarily, are they good? Absolutely. The day after sleep deprivation, are they great? Not so much. So just be a little bit more careful and cautious, and then you'll be right back to it the next day. So you're up, and you're also going to shorten potentially and decrease the intensity just a little bit. So you want to stay in the routine, especially if you're already there. You work out usually at a certain time in the morning. Keep that appointment with yourself or the trainer or whoever it is, but just back off a little bit. So go a little bit lighter on the weight, do one less set, or shorten the workout slightly. So there are ways that you can play. So you're still in the habit, you're still in that routine, and your body likes that circadian rhythm of staying on the routine and in the habit of doing something, and you're waking yourself up the same as you're used to, but it won't feel good. Think back to slumber parties when you were a kid. I mean, it all just, felt fine until it didn't, right? And then you hit the wall. But, you had to get through the day, or you did, and then went to bed. And, you're going to sleep better the following night if you stay in your routine. So a lot of times I'll get asked, what about a nap? Don't take a nap. That's my opinion. Don't take a nap. If you want to make that sleep up, go to bed a little earlier at night, but don't take the nap, because lots of us tend to get just enough or too much that we then feel groggy the rest of the day. And then going to bed that night is not really as great a sleep as it should or could have been either. So first thing in the morning, go ahead and get that exercise, get sunlight exposure to that, because that'll help wake you up. It'll help you produce more melatonin the next night when it gets dark again as well. So exposure early in the morning to sunlight or just to bright lights. If you have to, you're up at dark 100, right? And a lot of us are now with the time change. Okay. So that's kind of scheduling your exercise. Intense early, light late. How to schedule if you feel or you've tested your cortisol is up later in the day, you've got lots of anxiousness, that might be a clue that that's happening for you, so that you can sleep a little bit better at night. But then keeping that morning routine, keep your appointment with yourself, keep your wake up call exactly the same. It's 7 days a week, 365. There's no such thing as sleeping in if you really want to optimize sleep in perimenopause, menopause, or beyond. Okay. And that goes for menopause too. So just in case you're out there listening. All right. So I'm going to share some tools I take for travel exercise. So whether you're at home or you're in a hotel, but this is for those of you that may be traveling to the in-laws or the outlaws, or you're staying in a hotel, and what I pack in a suitcase. So these are fairly new, and I just did a webinar last week about gifts and tools for 2019 holiday gifts, of all price ranges. So these are, I happen to have one band for the arm and one for the leg with me. They come in pairs, so there's actually two of each. But these are blood flow restriction bands. And there's populations that they work for, and pretty much it's inclusive of everybody, although there are some contraindications. So if you've got varicose veins, you have existing health conditions, obviously if you're pregnant, and I know a lot of you are panicking thinking, if I'm pregnant, we are in big trouble. But if you've got, existing issues with blood pressure, extremely high blood pressure, with kind of low normal or low abnormal, you may be okay, but double check. So I've got a list in both a blog and a podcast that I did on these. So if you're interested. But the great thing about these is, if you're traveling, you probably aren't bringing your weights with you. You can do very lightweight or body weight workouts with these blood flow restrictions. And so basically you're tricking your body into thinking you're lifting heavier. So you can kind of stay on track no matter what that hotel gym, they get very creative at hotels with what they call a gym. Sometimes, no matter what they've got, or if you're just at somebody's house and you really don't have access to weights and you're raiding their pantry for soup cans and that's about all you've got, that's okay. It's going to prevent muscle loss. You're actually going to get a good workout and feel as if you did. So you've helped yourself mentally, you've helped yourself physically, not lose any traction. So those go in, and obviously they're super light, so you're not going to pay for that at baggage. And this is another fave. So this is called a Versa Loop, and they come in yellow is the lightest, green is the next, then red, and then I believe there's blue. This is from a company called Perform Better, and you'll find this is on my website at flipping50.com under resources. Kind of all of these things actually that I'm going to show you are there. But I love this for you put it on above your knees, especially if you're not used to using it yet. It'll work glutes. You can do sideways work, which this is a great tool for anybody, traveling or not, because we don't move laterally very much anymore. We don't do that like we did when we played as kids. So unless you're going to class and somebody is making you do that, but this is awesome for working on your glute medius and strengthening that, which is a big weakness for a lot of people who may end up then having piriformis problems. And if you know that word, it's probably because you have a friend who's a physical therapist, who's your friend because you needed them. So this is one great tool. You can put it above your knees. That's kind of step one. Put it on your ankles would be step two. And step three may be appropriate for you, but that would be on the arch of your feet. So the further away you get from your glutes and your core, the more potential stress and the more joints in between. So always start with it above your knees. And for some of you, it's probably where you need to stay if you've got knee issues or a knee replacement. But that also extremely light. You're not going to pay for that one at baggage claim. And they are probably $3 to $4. So just to give you an idea, you can buy a whole set of all the colors and kind of progress and go back, progress and regress depending on how you feel that day, what's appropriate, because the goal is not to compare what did I need yesterday, I've got to use this one. It's just what do I need today to reach fatigue for my body, because we all show up differently based on what we did yesterday and the day before that. Okay, so those are the exercise tools that I use for travel, and those are the things that I'm thinking when I'm traveling. I will also share a video with you that's from YouTube, or it's on my YouTube channel if any of you are there. It's the youtube.com URL is /flipping50TV, and it's a travel 7-minute workout, which you could repeat and do it again, but it's quick and dirty. And I use it a lot. For some reason, when I present for fitness conferences, I get these 7:30 a.m. time slots, and that is even too dark and sometimes cold. Sometimes it's nice, but it's too dark to go and run where I don't know the area and that, there might be a sidewalk level like that. I just don't, want to do it, and I don't want to carry a flashlight with me. So I'll do a quick one in my hotel room, because if you're used to that, especially, and it's like, that's your coffee, it's a great way to wake yourself up first thing in the morning. And it's not that, if you're used to 35 minutes of, your intervals or your cardio of some kind or strength training, it's not that, I'm telling you 7 minutes is just as good, but 7 minutes sometimes when you're traveling and you're stressed and maybe you didn't sleep as well in a hotel room, 7 minutes to wake up is exactly what you need. You don't need potentially the full workout, because you're not, on the couch eating bonbons, you're busy and that's what you're doing. And so life sometimes is a workout too. And we've got to think, all right, because I'm doing all of this, then maybe what I need is really just a short, quick workout anyway. So let yourself go with that. But I will do some boxing moves, kind of some body weight exercises to get blood flowing to major muscles, and call it a day. And I'm in the shower and that's it. So I'll share that link with you, but that's a no equipment type of workout. You're just using you doing lunges, doing squats, doing some boxing exercises, some core work, and kind of getting overall stimulated and waking up your brain. So when you're doing boxing, notice what I'm doing here. So just if you're thinking from the front, I'm crossing arms over my body. And some of you know that last week I did a TED Talk. So a TEDx talk. And whenever I'm backstage right before I go on, I do a lot of exercises where I cross my arms over, and I know this seems weird, but this is actually a good spot to rub. But crossing your arms over your body or rotating so that they do over the midline kind of connects your right brain and your left brain. And it just means you're going to be able to think and function a little bit better. And, it's always good to do that, before you interact with your in-laws or your outlaws, right? Even if you're not on stage, it's a good thing to do. So as a quick wake-up call. So you may want to do that. Or if you travel for work, like I do frequently, that would be a great thing. So here's what else is in my suitcase. Just some little sleep things. If you got my email today, some of you know about these. These two come from either the flipping50.com/resources area, or they're from the Flipping 50 Amazon page, where I just kind of reserved them for you. But this is an eye mask, and I think you can see it. So looking at the reflection here, you can see how it's contoured. The contours here mean that your eyeball is protected, that orbit, but the pressure of this on your eye, just like cushioning it like a pillow, actually helps melatonin production as well, and so does the dark. So the more dark you can make that room, in case the curtains won't close all the way, or your partner is reading, or gets up earlier than you do, this is an amazing way to kind of shut out the light, whether you're alone or with somebody else. So I wear it at home even, and it's pretty dark in my room, but it still helps. And that little cushion here helps melatonin production, which is your sleep regulating hormone. So this is an awesome little tool. And I also use earplugs and order them, but it came with some extras. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get this open without breaking a nail. I know, right? So I'm going to bring this up and show you right here. So look at that. Okay. They go inside, and these are the best earplugs that I have ever had. And they're not painful. They go all the way in. We all have different shaped ears. It's why all the earbuds shapes differently for all of our needs. But these things are super comfortable, so much better than these. So these are just little, not styrofoam, but kind of styrofoam. And then you're supposed to twist them. These don't work for me. I don't know who they work for, but they don't work for me. And so noise reduction earplugs that come in those little cans, they look like vitamins, but they don't work too well. So these are much nicer. So think about it. If you are next to a snorer or a pet who makes noise in the middle of the night, or you're very sensitive to sound, my trick in a hotel is to, first thing in the hotel room, I will go and find the thermostat and make sure that I can turn it on auto or off of auto and turn it on high or low. And I always choose high for the fan, just so it's running constantly. It doesn't have that on and off, kicking on and kicking off. So you've got white noise in the background. And then right before I go to sleep, I'll turn the temperature down to 65 to 68, depending on how it's feeling and what time of year it is, a lot of times. So it's super cool, and you're not going to wake up. And, especially those of you who may be having night sweats or hot flashes, you'll be much more comfortable if you do that. And depending on the hotel you're staying in, I can wake up in the middle of the night. Does anybody experience this? I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I will be like, okay, you chose the cheap bedding, right? So, this is like polyester. This is not good. This is really not down. You're fooling me here. And because, your body temperature is rising, it's not so good. But take those things. That'll kind of give you some insurance. Now you've got it temperature-wise controlled. It's dark and it's quiet. You're going to sleep better. I sometimes sleep better in a hotel than I do at home, because Truman is here, and inevitably he will have eaten a sock, and then we'll have that at the middle of the night. Why can't they throw up in the morning? I don't know, but it's always in the middle of the night. I will also take lavender. So on this current trip I'm going this week, I potentially may not take this, so I'm kind of eliminating all of the little extras. But lavender essential oil and I'll do a couple of things with it. So if the hotel has a bathtub, don't know what happened to them. They don't have bathtubs anymore. I used to clean it and then I would take a bath in it, but I would drop some of the lavender essential oil in it just so that it steeps. Lavender is one of them that most people can tolerate it directly on their skin without a carrier oil. So you can rub it if you're more sensitive on your earlobes, and put it some places that are least sensitive or on the bottoms of your feet, and that can help too. So that's super helpful. And then as far as sleep goes, every night with dinner, I take magnesium citrate, and it's a 2 tolerance kind of a mineral. So you actually, yes, there's a minimum amount that we all need, but I take more than that. And I've tested myself, and I walk clients through how do you test and know what you need. So if it's not helping your sleep, you can bump it up. But there is magnesium citrate and magnesium glycinate. So if you want help with regularity and you're traveling, you might, then citrate is your friend. If you're thinking, I don't want anybody to touch that because everything is just fine in that department, you probably want magnesium glycinate, and that could help you with sleep. So for people who are a little more prone to headaches, muscle cramps, tend to just be a little bit more anxious, have a hard time relaxing and chilling out in the evening, magnesium may be deficient. And if you also are more constipated, you may want to use some of the magnesium citrate to help you as well. But magnesium does so many things for us. And depending on who you ask, somewhere between 400 and 600 enzyme transactions happen because of magnesium, and many are related to metabolism. So magnesium is a girl's best friend, especially if you need it for sleep and or you're constipated. And I know that's not a very pleasant conversation, but what I've realized, having worked with so many women at Flipping 50, is you don't have that conversation with anybody. It's like you don't bring it up with your doctor. You're probably not talking to your girlfriend about it, and you probably don't talk to your significant other about it. So until I asked that question, I didn't hear a lot about it, and gas and bloating and, constipation, diarrhea issues often come up when you're working with a trainer because, it's physical. You're active, and sometimes that can cause gas and get things moving. So it naturally comes up. So that's the connection. So this may be something to look into. So I will take that with dinner. Magnesium's more easily absorbed with food. But for those of you who are familiar with Calm, the milligrams in Calm is much less than the milligrams in a straight supplement. But there are some other things in Calm, and that may work for you, especially if you're very sensitive and you don't need very much. I think there is about 125 milligrams in Calm. So if you've got it and you're using it, or here's what I hear most often, oh, I have that. I use that sometimes, but you haven't really tested it to know, does that work? And is your use, when it's consistent, really making a difference? So I would suggest, if you're going to be traveling over the holidays, that you get into a habit of starting to use it now so that you know what's normal for you, and get your sleep dialed in while you're at home, so that if you are traveling, then you have an idea of what happens when I travel and how might I want to modify that. So those are just things for you to think about. And here's my go-to as well. So Atrantil, yeah, discovered this because I needed it. I was traveling, and ironically, I travel and I run with a crowd of people who likes to eat really healthy. And so I was eating very healthfully. I wasn't eating anything that had food sensitivities in it. Maybe there's a little stress, because obviously we were traveling. But I went into a meeting in the morning and asked, because a friend of mine was a gastroenterologist, and I said, do you have anything? And he's like, well, I guess I do, yes. So I took 2 of these. I felt better in a few hours. I took two and I kept taking them through the weekend just to make sure. But I was just uncomfortable and I was bloated and couldn't figure out why. I was exercising. I was happy. I really wasn't stressed. I wasn't on it any means. I was just participating. So, but that is a go-to for me. You use it basically when there's any change kind of in your gut health or elimination habits. And it's very safe. It's been tested, but bloating, abdominal discomfort, change in bowel habits, and it stays in my purse, right? So when I travel, it's definitely there. So it's a saver, because that really spoils, anything. But if you're traveling and going to holiday events or buffets or whatever it might be, and you don't know if the food will be okay for you, or you think it is, and then suddenly it's not, having that with you is really nice. So the other thing that I'm taking that I'm just going to share with you, because I'm traveling for a week, but I'm traveling out of the country. But when I'm traveling, if I'm going to have a string of things together, I will start taking vitamin C for a week or two in higher doses before I go, just to help bump up my immune system. And then I'll be taking it while I'm away. I am doing an endurance event next week. It's going to be ugly. So I'm going to be taking some to help me recover too, and make sure my immune system is not depleted then as well. But just things to think about. So if you buffer yourself, you bump your immune system up and get it all buff and shiny. You may be exposed to people who are coughing or sneezing, or, children and touching things that other people have touched. But that doesn't mean you're going to get sick. If your immune system is in good shape, you're going to be fine. And I think it's important for you to tell yourself that it's really not about exposure, not unless you're run down already and you have a weakened immune system. So those are all my tricks. So those are all things that are coming and going right back into my suitcase. So I'm going to answer a couple of questions here if you've got them. So hang on. Lori says, I've read two thoughts on the amount of sleep needed. Some say minimum of 7 to 8 hours, and others say some people do well on 6 or 7 hours as long as they go to sleep early. What are my thoughts? Yeah, great share. Here's my thoughts. The research says, the range is anything between 7 and 9 is most common and true. Some people can get by with 6.5 hours. After 10 hours, actually your risk of heart events goes up. Don't know if you know that, but if you're somebody who sleeps close to 10 hours or definitely more, the risk of heart attack is greater. The correlation there is greater. So there's no good or bad spot, but there's no quota. That I think is the most important thing. You just need to test yourself. So in the 28-day kickstart and in the After 50 fitness formula for women, and there I go, I can't point, the course, I take you through a sleep needs test because I can't tell you what you need. I don't think anybody should say you should get at least 8 hours, because you may or may not need it. You may need more, you may need less. Where do you function the best? And you want to go to bed when it's cold and dark and quiet, and allow yourself to wake up naturally. And what time did you go to bed? What time did you wake up? And how many hours were in between? If you can get at least 5 nights like that, where there's no pressure for you to get up, you just get delicious sleep and you get what you want, then now here's my sleep need, and you can look at what am I normally getting. But that's your average. When you get up and you feel refreshed in the morning, and you know what that time was, when nobody is telling you, go to bed now, and you're not telling yourself, well, I don't want to go to bed yet, the show's not over, or whatever. So you want to go to bed when you get tired. Note what time that is. There is a difference in time that you sleep. And so wherever you are, you adapt to your natural time zone. And So keep that in mind. It just has to do with where you are in your life around the clock. But there's been a difference shown in, say, if you go to bed at 12 and you sleep until 8 a.m. versus you go to bed at 10 p.m. and you sleep until 6 a.m. That's 8 hours, right? Everybody doing math with me? That's about my limit. But the people who go to bed earlier actually get a higher quality of sleep. There's something to do with that earlier time zone, gets you into deeper cycles of sleep every time you go through one. So we cycle through kind of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we go through them again throughout the night. And they're anywhere between 60 and about 90-minute cycles, supposedly. So when we wake up naturally, it is probably at the end of a cycle. And if you wake up to an alarm clock, it's potentially disrupting one of those cycles. So you may not feel as rested because you've broken that cycle in the middle if you're getting up to an alarm clock. But the idea behind doing that sleep needs test is when you figure out how many hours you actually need. If those of you who have a hard stop in the morning, like for sleep, you've got to get up at this point because that's the time you have to get ready for work. You know then what time you have to go to bed, and you just have to do it. Because if you're going to have optimal health and you're going to live a really long life, you're going to live longer and do much better and not be accelerating aging if you have optimal sleep. Just plain facts. So I hope that helps, but that was great. Sandra, you're asking if this will be replayed, and you may have had to leave. It lives here, so I won't remove it. So if you're ever looking for something that was live, you can go to videos and click on it and then kind of seek through. And I do not know what was happening with my keyboard. Somebody punched something accidentally. I don't know who that would be since I live alone. But it was typing backwards on me. So I tried to put in here that I was going to be talking about sleep and didn't get in there. So there you go. So it will be here. Cindy says, so glad I listened to this. I sleep well, but occasionally have a bad night and never knew what to do. Oh, that's great. Good. So, for those of you who do sleep well, all you're really trying to do, hopefully, is just reinforce, that, okay, I was doing this right already, or dial it in so that if you ever do have a poor night's sleep, and who doesn't? I mean, we can count on the fact that we may have a poor night's sleep here and there, but now you know what to do, and it's getting up in the morning, don't sleep in, and I know as good as that may feel, it's like, for most of us, I think if we toss and turn, we will finally feel like I just got to sleep and then it was time to get up. But do it anyway. Get up. Don't try to catch up, because there's not any catching up until the next night. So go to bed an hour earlier the next night and take it easy. Be nice to yourself that during that day. Cut back on things you don't have to do, but don't nap and don't sleep in. So there you have it. Okay, guys. So just a couple things coming up. This is a crazy month, right? With lots of Black Friday specials coming up. So the cafe, the doors will be open for enrollment. It's closed ordinarily. We've started doing that. We're only open in the summertime and then later in the year. So this is the later. We just decided to take advantage of Black Friday as opposed to wait until December, for those people thinking about January starts. So flipping50.com, the cafe, it's /cafe, and you can just get on the notification list so you can learn details about it when it does open and all the goodies that you get and how to become a member. A couple other things coming up. For those of you that are interested in kicking off your new year with a live event here in Scottsdale, and for all intents and purposes, I think the weather is probably going to be the same. It's like 75 and sunny yesterday and today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So it gets cool at night, and we're going to have some fun events, but that's the end of January. And details about that I can add to the link as well. But last but not least, If you are or someone you know is interested in private coaching, I only take a handful of people for private coaching at one point because I only have so much time and I want to be able to give everybody some attention. So we are right now, I'm offering a few spots, opening them up, and we're giving for 6 months coaching package, giving $2,000 worth of bonuses away. So if you're interested in private coaching and you would love a weekly workout schedule customized for you to talk about your nutrition status weekly just for you, and some extra perks and bonuses that you might want to take advantage of, especially if anything else has appealed to you. So there's flipping50.com/call, CALL, and you can book appointments with me Monday and Tuesday. And after that, I'm out of the country for a week. So act quickly while those are still available. And other than that, have a wonderful rest of your Sunday evening. If anybody else have a question, I would love to know it. And I don't see any here. I'm kind of scrolling through. So, okay. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. And I will be tuning in here and there from the beach sometime next week. So, thanks so much for being here. Bye.